Special physiology of central nervous system. We will describe the structures of the brain and its functions. We may draw the spinal cord and the brain, cerebellum and hemispheres, hypothalamus, and what is distinguished in the brain. The first part is the medulla oblongata, here, also visible here. The medulla oblongata contains nerve centers that are responsible for vital functions like the center of respiration, the center that controls the tone of blood vessels, vasomotor center, etc. Even the small lesion of the medulla oblongata due to the stroke or trauma may be lethal, may lead to the death. If we will go upward, we will see the pons and the cerebellum. The pons and the cerebellum. The cerebellum is responsible for the coordination of body movements, for autonomic regulation of muscle contraction, for autonomic control during the muscle contractions. It also takes part in the control of the muscle tone. The symptoms of the cerebellum dysfunctions are well known. They include tremor or shaking, astasia, and abasia is an ability to stand or walk in the absence of balance. Atonia, the decrease or absence of the muscle tone. Asthenia, the weakness of muscles. The pons is located in the upper part of the brain stem, and together with the medulla oblongata, the cerebellum, pons produces the hindbrain. In general, the pons is a very important part of the brain's pathways. It acts as an important sensory relay and motor relay which provides information conduction to different parts of the nervous system like cerebellum, cerebrum, and spinal cord. So its function may be described as a bridge or highway between different parts of the nervous system. In the hindbrain, some nuclei of the cranial nerves may be found. For example, the nucleus of vagus is located in the medulla oblongata. In the pons, we may find some nuclei, for example, trigeminal nerve, abducens nerve, facial nerve, vestibulocochlear nerve. So they are these nuclei are located in the pons. Also, pons takes part in the regulation of the respiration. Here we may find apnoistic center that stimulates inspiration of air, and pneumotaxic center that is located in the upper pons and inhibits inspiration. In the hindbrain and in the other parts of the brain, we may find the reticular formation. Reticular formation that was already described. It was found by Gorazio Megun, American neuroscientist, and reticular formation produces a net by the neurons and its processes that produces an arousal reaction that produces an alertness and awakeness, such state of mind that that plays an important function in consciousness. And reticular formation is found throughout the brainstem and in the spinal cord and in other parts of the brain. It is an important part of system that produces the arousal. The midbrain. This section of the brain serves as a relay center for sensory information, and it controls reflexes and movement of muscles, and it is including the ganglia, the nuclei, which are extremely important in the regulation of the muscle tone. We will name some of them, like substantia nigra, or black substance. This is the main source of dopamine in the brain, and the deficiency of dopamine in that area results in Parkinson's disease, the severe disturbance of the control of muscle tone and body movements. In the midbrain we may find also red nucleus, nucleus ruber, the reticular formation as well in the midbrain. Midbrain is associated with cerebellum, with Pons and Medulla Oblongata, and produces the brainstem. Diencephalon is located at under the brainstem, and it is including the hypothalamus and the thalamus. May also be visible on that picture. That area. Hypothalamus connects to the pituitary gland here, and pituitary gland is the conductor of endocrine system, as we know. Hypothalamus plays a vital role in maintaining homeostasis, the state of equilibrium of the body. The term that was introduced by Claude Bernard, physiologist. Hypothalamus is monitoring the concentrations of glucose, of protons, regulates pH, osmotic pressure, and all substantial parameters of the internal environment. Hypothalamus also, with the regulation of endocrine system, coordinates the autonomic nervous system. Anterior parts of hypothalamus are responsible for the control of parasympathetic and posterior for sympathetic division of autonomic nervous system. The hypothalamus regulates, or better to say, coordinates the most important motivations like thirst, Hunger, it controls the temperature, the body temperature. The center of thermoregulation is located in the hypothalamus. Libido, and responsible for circadian rhythm, for sleep and awake cycle. It is also a part of limbic system, so it controls emotions, motor functions. So it's extremely important part of the brain. It is a relatively small hypothalamus, contains more than 100 pairs of nuclei. Thalamus is in fact the relay station for incoming sensory nerve impulses and for outcoming motor impulses, which do pass through the thalamus. So most sensory signals, auditory, visual, somatosensory signals, go through this structure. So all sensory inputs except olfaction pass the thalamus. It also plays a major role in motor control, responsible for control of muscle movements through its various connections with the basal ganglia, cerebellum, and the motor cortex. So we may call thalamus the relay station. So we spoke already about the limbic system. It will be important to know that this system represents the brain structures which in ancient time were responsible possibly for olfaction, but now they developed in the structures which are responsible for emotional response, for emotions. These structures include not only hypothalamus but also the septum, amygdala, which is the center of fear and aggressive responses, hippocampus, the relatively big structure which also takes part in the memory formation, in the memory, since in the saving of information, especially in the short-term memory. The cingulate gyrus, located here, which is responsible for the pain and also for emotions. So this limbic system structures sometimes produce the circles, like Puppet's circle, where the excitation may circulate for a while, keeping the emotional excitation remaining for a while, sometimes for a long time. The Diencephalon and Telencephalon, they produce the forebrain. So about Diencephalon we already have been speaking. Now Telencephalon. Telencephalon consists of two cerebral hemispheres of the cerebrum and their interconnections. So the cerebrum is the largest part of the brain. The cerebrum is divided into two cerebral hemispheres by the medial longitudinal fissure, and these two hemispheres are connected to each other by corpus callosum. The cortex of each hemisphere is divided into 4 lobes. The frontal lobe, as we can see, the frontal lobe, the temporal lobe, parietal lobe, and occipital lobe. The ridges present on the surface of the cortex are called gyri, whereas the grooves are called sulci. Frontal lobe is divided from parietal lobe by the central sulcus here, and parietal lobe is divided from the temporal lobe by the lateral sulcus. The anterior from the central sulcus, we may see the Precentral Gyrus here. The Precentral Gyrus is responsible for the control of movements in the different parts of the body. So if the lesion will be found in the upper part of this precentral gyrus, then the disturbance of motor control will be found in the arms or in the legs, and if at the bottom, then facial paralysis will be found on the opposite side, because the corticospinal tract that begins from the precentral gyrus crosses the nervous system predominantly on the opposite side of the body. And the postcentral gyrus is responsible for the sensation, for the somatosensory inputs, and the lesion of that part of the brain will result in the inability to be aware of the body parts. The lesion of the postcentral gyrus is leading to anesthesia, and the lesion of precentral gyrus is results in paralysis. Also will characterize the Broca area, that is the part of the frontal lobe, and that part is responsible for ability to say words. If the stroke will damage that area, the Broca aphasia, or difficulty in saying words, will be observed. And also we may characterize the part of the temporal lobe that is called Vernix Area here, and the lesion of that area results in